Good morning, gang. This is Ryan from Old School Automotive. Just checking in, and today you can see I'm not in my shop clothes, just doing a quick video to get back going on the channel again. First off, I want to apologize to you. I know that was kind of a couple months break in the videos, and that's completely on me. Summer vacation came along. I had some child custody issues with my ex, still dealing with that, but the point is, or what this leads us into today is, I'd like to talk a little bit about the car guy lifestyle, hot rodding and all that, and how life can sometimes get in the way, and what you probably want to do, or what you can do to kind of ease the transition back into working on your project car. Now, there's a lot of guys that when they get a project car, you know, it happens to all of us. We're really excited when that new project comes in, and we're all like, all right, let's go jump in and work on this, and we're going to get it done. And the first thing you do is you start tearing into this thing. You start tearing it apart. And that's the part of the project that can really trip you up, because during that enthusiasm to tear this thing down, you're thinking to yourself, I'll remember where this goes. I'll remember where this goes. Trust me on this, you're not. Especially if life gets in the way and more than a couple of weeks goes by, a couple of months, who knows, sometimes you could have a project that gets backburned for a year or more. And even if that doesn't happen and you're still just working on that project, you're still not going to remember where all those nuts and bolts go, where all those parts go. So that's where you want to be really careful as you're getting into these projects. Document, document, document. That goes with anything in life, especially if you're dealing with an ex. But my point here is, use your cell phone, take pictures of where things go, because not only is this going to help you when it comes time, even if you remember where something goes, you might not remember the exact orientation of the part, or which, like, oh, I got a bunch of bolts that hold these engine brackets on, but oh man, like some of these were painted a different color, and they, you know, is the bolt the same color as the engine block, or is the bolt the same color as the bracket, or whatever? Or how does this alternator orient in this bracket? I know the alternator goes in this bracket, but I can't figure out how it's supposed to clock in here. That's where those pictures are going to help out, because the pictures are going to capture details that you may not specifically have keyed in on yourself. So go ahead and take those pictures, and not only is it going to help you in the reassembly process and all that, but you're going to have some cool stuff to show on Facebook. You know, you're going to want to be able to, after this car is done, you're going to want to be able to look back and say, look at this pile of crap that I started with, you know, because you might be showing a buddy and, you know, they're just kind of like, okay, you know, it's a car, it's an engine, whatever, you know, why is this supposed to be impressive? And then you're like, here, well, this is what I started with. And when you show them that before picture, that's when the light goes on in someone's head. Oh, I see. Okay, you've done a lot of work here. Because a lot of non-car people aren't going to appreciate the difference, because they're not going to, it just doesn't occur to people. They don't always think like we do. So keep that in mind while you're doing the project. Take those pictures. Having a notebook with, you know, taking good notes, that's always important. The biggest thing that people do wrong when they're starting on a project, and it really bites you in the hind end when it comes time to reassemble, is not keeping track of fasteners. And I'm just as guilty of this myself. I've got a couple of magnetic parts trays floating around. As you can see from the Rambler project, I've got this magnetic parts tray, and, you know, I got some engine fasteners dropped in here. Now it's been more than 6 months. It's been 3 months since I've even looked at the project, or more, and it was probably 9 to 12 months since I took those fasteners out. And they're painted engine color, so I know that they go on the engine someplace. But at this point, I'm a little bit lost as to where they go, so I kind of hosed myself. Actually not usually, I shouldn't say usually, because I still don't do it. I'm bad at this myself. But what you ought to do is just grab an old piece of cardboard when you're taking bolts apart, get yourself a Phillips head or a narrow flat tip screwdriver, whatever, not a hole punch, but like an awl, like a scribe or something like that. Stab a hole through that piece of cardboard, and you can jam the bolts in the piece of cardboard, and then you can label with a Sharpie right on the cardboard where all these bolts and nuts and stuff go. Nuts, not so much. You're going to end up bagging those, which leads into another thing. If you do decide to go the Ziploc bag route, not only do you have to label the individual Ziploc bag, but that's definitely where you want to keep a notebook, and probably cardboard boxes as well, because my first car project that I ever did was the first car that I bought, my '69 Mustang. Paid $500 for it originally. My dad and I took 15 months, tore the thing completely apart in the garage at home back in northern Maine. We were pretty meticulous, or so we thought, about when we disassembled this car. Every single bit of this car came out of it except for the rear window. Everything else was completely disassembled. We stripped this car down to the bare metal. And we bought a couple of boxes of sandwich bags and a couple of Sharpies, and every time we took stuff apart, we would label the bag and then drop the bolts in it, and then we'd set the bags aside. When it came time to reassemble, though, the problem was we had a mountain of Ziploc bags, and I even knew what the label was. I would be looking for a bag that would say seatbelt bolts driver's side, but I'm looking through hundreds, maybe 1,000 Ziploc bags that look identical to it, and I couldn't find it. So I ended up, a lot of times I would end up buying new fasteners, and when the project was all over, I was able to find the stuff. Oh, there's that bag of the seatbelt bolts driver's side. It was hiding underneath all these other bags of engine bolts and valve cover bolts and stuff like this. So what I would suggest, especially for nuts, because it's hard, you can't really take a nut and stick it into a piece of cardboard like you would with the bolts. The cardboard works great for bolts, especially if you're on a small project. If you're doing a whole car, baggies work good. But here's my suggestion for that. Lessons learned. Have baggies for the fasteners, and you bag them like an individual group. Not more than, no more fasteners to a bag than go to an individual assembly. So if you got like 10 or 12 screws to hold the dash pad on, dash pad screws, boom, they all go in that box, or in that bag rather. Then get yourself some cardboard boxes. Be saving all those Amazon boxes and all the boxes your parts you're ordering are coming in, and then have boxes that are grouped together. Have one box for everything that's under the hood, have one box for everything that's interior, have one box for everything that's suspension related, have another box for everything that's exterior and body panels related. That way, you're not digging through all the nuts and bolts from all over the car just to find those seatbelt bolts. You're not having to dig past your valve cover and oil pan and motor mount bolts to get to those seatbelt bolts. You can just go right to the interior box, and then you're only digging through interior bolts. Then I would also back that up with a notebook. Have a notebook, and in that notebook, you don't really have to get too detailed, but just write down what the bag labels are. Because there was times when I knew that I was looking for, bolts for the dash pad, for instance, but I couldn't remember if I wrote dash pad screws, or if I just wrote interior screws, or if I wrote dash screws, or what. So if you write down what the bag label is in your notebook, then you can page down through your notebook and say, oh, okay, I remember now, it was here in this bag, this is the label that I'm looking for. And then you can tell someone else, if you're looking through, hey, here, take half the bags from the interior, help me find the one that says whatever it's going to be. That's something that can help you out big time. So a notebook, boxes to separate stuff, and then bags in general. And speaking of a notebook, it's always a good idea whenever you're doing a car project to have a notebook that kind of has your overall plan of attack, or a chalkboard. Then you can kind of take what you figure you're going to need to do to your project car and make it into a checklist. Here in the shop, on the opposite wall behind the camera here, I've got some storage cabinets, and I masked them off and use chalkboard paint. You can buy chalkboard spray paint. In fact, I got some right here on the shelf. Got some Krylon chalkboard black. This stuff is great. You can spray this on anything. You can spray this in your toolbox. You can spray it on a wall, whatever. In my case, I've got it painted on the storage cabinets in the back, and I keep a couple pieces of chalk over there right next to it. So I'll write what my project car is at the top, and then I'll write down all the different things I know it's going to need. I know it's going to need, you know, new brake pads. It's going to need the rotors turned and reinstalled. I know I'm going to need to be repacking the wheel bearings, and then so on and so forth. And I write all those things down on the board, and I try to do it in an order that makes sense. The nice thing about the chalkboard, obviously, you can erase it and move it around. So I'll throw it up on the chalkboard, and then I'll look at it and be like, oh no, I know I'm going to need to do this before this, so I'll move it around. And then once I got it in a kind of a quasi-logical order, I have little boxes, little check boxes right next to everything. And that way, as I'm going down through, I'm able to check off the boxes to show what I've done. I've already turned those rotors. I've already replaced those brake pads. I've already repacked those wheel bearings and reinstalled this in the car. That'll help you, especially after a long break in the action like I've just had. You'll be able to look at your checklist and kind of get yourself up to speed, because like one of the things that's really hard about getting back going in a project again is just remembering where you left off. Like, I remember I was doing this, but I can't remember exactly where I stopped. And if you have that checklist, then you'll be able to look at it and say, oh yeah, okay, I was here, this is where I left off, this is where I need to pick it back up. And for me, in my case, as you can kind of see, the garage is a little cleaner than it was before. You can actually kind of sort of see the top of the workbench, which is not a very common sight in this garage here. I took a couple of weekends actually. The garage was so bad that even though I started to have time again to get back at my projects, it's hard to find that motivation when you got a dirty garage and you're just like, oh man, I'm gonna have to dig through a great big pile of junk on my workbench, and I don't know where half my tools are. So sometimes a good way to get back in the swing of a project is just go through and do a good garage cleanup. Now you do run the risk here of moving parts around and misplacing them, which is again where the notebook and the tracking and all that stuff comes in. But it's a lot easier when you've been out of the car guy game for a couple of months. You know, when you're more used to just going inside and playing a little Xbox, or just sitting down watching TV, or hanging out with your kids or your family or whatever. It's a lot easier to tear yourself away from that and get back out in the garage if it's a nice clean garage. You know, because if you're thinking about a giant messy garage where you're tripping over stuff, you're like, oh, man, I just don't want to deal with that. I just don't. No, you're not going to want to get out of that nice, comfy, warm house and get out to your cold or hot in the summer garage. But if you get yourself a nice, clean, well-organized garage, it's a lot easier to be like, yeah, you know what? I really want to get back in that project car. My garage is all clean and nice, and it's a lot easier to get yourself motivated. And as I'm sure most of you guys know, my experience is probably the same as yours. Getting out to the garage is the hardest thing you're going to do in your project. Like, the hardest part of being a car guy is showing up. It really is, because that's what I tell people: staying motivated on a project. And this kind of dovetailing with staying motivated on your projects. Motivation, it's real easy to look at this project and get overwhelmed. You're like, man, I've got this car completely blown apart. I don't know how I'm going to get this thing back together. You know, maybe I'm in over my head. And I've been working on cars for a long time, 20 plus years. And it still happens to me where I'll think like, oh geez, maybe I get in over my head on this project. And my rational mind knows that I'm not in over my head, but like in the back of my mind, there's always that voice of self-doubt in everybody's mind. No matter what you do, if you're a car guy, if you got some other hobby, there's always self-doubt. You got to get past that. So to stay motivated and to not let that voice, that self-doubt voice, get in there and take over, what I tell myself is I'll pick whatever days that I'm going to work on the cars, you know, for my project car days. If I've got a week off, you know, I decide if I'm going to work on it every day or every other day, whatever days you're going to work on it, pick them out ahead of time. Say every Friday or every Saturday. Pick one day a week, even if it's just one day a week. Say, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on this project car, a minimum of 5 minutes, or even a minimum of 5 minutes a day. That's actually probably a better bet, because we can all spare 5 minutes a day. And 5 minutes a day adds up. I mean, you do 5 minutes a day after work on your 5-day work week, that's a half hour's worth of work that you otherwise wouldn't have got done. What you're going to notice is that the first 5 minutes is the hardest. Once you've already got in your shop clothes and gone out to the garage and looked at that project car and worked on it for 5 minutes, pardon me, after you've done that first 5 minutes, man, you're like, you know what, I'll do 5 more minutes. This is actually, I'm having fun now. It's the first 5 minutes which is the hardest. So if you can get past that first 5 minutes, I had a project car a while back, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I did the 5 minute per day trick, and had I not done that, I wouldn't have done anything. That thing would still be untouched. As it was, I committed 5 minutes a day, and I'll be darned if I didn't get an amazing amount of work done, because every day 5 minutes would turn into 10, 15, 20. I ended up spending almost an hour a day actually making solid progress on this. It was a early Bronco body tub, and drilling out spot welds. And if you've ever worked on, you know, anything with spot welds, you know there's a ton of them. Well, you drill out spot welds for 5 minutes, you get 2 or 3 spot welds drilled out, no big deal. But as it was, I was spending 20, 30 minutes a day, man. Inside of a couple of weeks, I had the entire body tub broken down into its component panels, and that was a big amount of progress that, like I said, wouldn't have got done otherwise. So a lot of times the toughest part of a car guy is just showing up. So that's part of the reason why I'm here today making this video is, you know, again, just the hardest part is showing up and trying to get back in this whole YouTube swing. You know, I've been putting it off. I probably could have been out here 2 weeks ago, and I apologize to you guys for that, but I just kept putting it off. And I finally said today, you know what? Forget this. I'm not going to worry about getting my shop closed. I'm just going to get out to the garage and I'll take my coffee. We're going to have a little cars and coffee thing. And that's actually something that I've been considering doing on this YouTube channel as well. I know we do a lot of videos that are mostly concerned with the actual nuts and bolts and doing of the car projects, but I thought a lot about inviting a guest crew on to just, you know, sit around, have some coffee, and talk about car-related issues, and then just take the highlights and edit them together into some videos for you guys. So if that sounds like something you guys might want to see, go ahead and drop a comment, and we'll see about doing that. I got a couple of guys that I regularly turn some wrenches with. One of my buddies, Parker, I met him through another friend, Chris, and Chris is the guy that I got the 68 Rambler project from, which is a bit of an interesting tale there. But Chris and Parker, they're car guys just like me. Well, maybe not just like me, but they're really cool guys, and I'm thinking about inviting them on. We just, you know, have a little sit down out here in the garage, have some coffee, talk cars, talk politics. I don't know. Let me know if you guys want to see us talk politics. I'm sure we've got some interesting views that might be entertaining. Who knows? But we usually end up talking cars and politics. We talk about guns and girls and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun, you know. Maybe you guys might enjoy that. So again, if it's something you want to see us go that direction, I think they'd probably be up for it. So drop a comment. But anyway, since I got you here, yeah, the story of the Rambler project. So the Rambler originally was purchased by my buddy Chris. And Chris is one of these guys that has a knack for finding vehicles. Like I'm bad at finding cars. I mean, not that I really need any more help, because Lord knows I got enough project cars as it is. But Chris is one of these guys that the gods of finding cheap project cars smile on him regularly. And Chris got a hold of this 68 Rambler wagon, and it had the 232 straight six and a little Borg Warner automatic. And so he calls me up, or actually no, I think I originally posted on Facebook, or saw it on Facebook, because he posted up to a local Facebook page saying, hey, I got this Rambler, are there any AMC, anybody got recommendations for an AMC mechanic, because this thing's got a rod knock. And I saw it, and I'm kind of new to the AMC world myself, but I really dig on these AMC cars. I only recently discovered them. I just think they're really damn cool. And so I posted up, I'm like, hey man, I'm no AMC expert, but I really think AMCs are cool, and I got a lot of experience working on cars in general. And there's three kinds of work: good, fast, and cheap. I do good work, I do cheap work, but I don't do fast work ever. And so I told him this. He was like, yeah, you know what? That sounds like right up my alley. I told him, I'm like, hey, I'm just a guy that I work out of the garage at my house, and keeps the overhead costs down. Come over, we'll drink a few beers, we'll work on your car. You can help out. I'm not one of these guys that's like nobody in the shop. I mean, come on over, turn wrenches with me, drink some beers. Good time. But anyway, he's like, okay, cool. So this thing's got a rod knock. I want to rebuild the engine in it. I'm like, all right, great. I got a flatbed trailer. I'll come over, pick it up. We'll bring it over. He's like, no, it's fine. I'll just drive it over. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Probably not a good idea if the thing's got a rod knock. And he was adamant. No, it's good. I'll drive it over. I'm like, all right, man, it's no big deal. I got the trailer. No, I'll drive it. Okay. So anyway, the day comes. He's supposed to be driving over here, and I think you know where this story's going. And looking at my watch, I'm like, I wonder where Chris is. He was supposed to be here. Then I get a phone call, and I knew before I even answered what was going on. He's like, hey man, it's Chris. I'm like, hey Chris, what's going on? And he's like, man, I think I blew the motor in this car. I'm like, oh really? Do tell. He's like, yeah, I was driving along and it was knocking really hard, and all of a sudden there was a big bang and I lost all power. I'm getting it towed to your house right now. Is that okay? Do you think maybe I can store the car at your house? I'm like, dude, don't worry. It's good. I live out in the country. I got some acreage. We'll tuck it out back. No big deal. And sure enough, we got it here, and the thing came up on the tow truck, and there was the big bleeding spot of oil underneath the engine compartment. And we opened up the hood, and yeah, it windowed the side of the block. Number 2 rod decided to exit stage left. So I'm like, well, there's your problem right there. So what we ended up deciding then was I got this 78 Matador wagon project car. Somebody had taken the original 360 out of it, stuffed a 304 into it, and we're like, all right, cool. The 69 SC Rambler, the Scrambler, it came with a V8. We'll get some V8 Rambler motor mounts, and we'll just jam this 304 727 combo in here, and you'll be off to the races. And so that was initially the project, and then that was going to initially be the project, but then he decided he wanted to go a different route. He wanted to do this Dare to Be Different thing. And I'm a Ford guy, and for some reason, between the two of us, we came up with this harebrained scheme to jam a 289 C4 combo into this thing. And we ended up getting our hands on 289 and C4 core, and it was during COVID, and we had this thing at the engine rebuilder. It was the engine rebuilder locally here, who's probably he's got a really good reputation as being a performance high-end engine builder, and he is. He does really good work, but he's one of these guys that, because he does such good work, he's backed up like a million years, and it took, literally, it took longer for this engine to be born than for a baby to be born. It was something like 10 or 11 months from when we dropped off the core until we got this engine back. And it wasn't like we needed anything crazy done. all we had to do was just regular block prep work, wash, align hone, bore, and deck. And like normally that's at most machine shops, you're talking a week, maybe 2 turnaround. This guy, it literally took 10 freaking months. And don't get me wrong, the guy did great work, but I mean that's excessive. And we were not looking for some kind of like super high-end build, so it was a little bit frustrating. But it ended up working out because in that 10 months, when Chris got this Rambler wagon, he's really a Falcon guy. He's an early 60s Ford Falcon fan. And his dream car was an early 60s Falcon wagon. And of course, finding the 60 to 63 Falcon wagon, those things are like hen's teeth. So anyway, in this 10 or 11 months that the engine was off at the builders, literally we get this engine back. I've got that 289. I think I'd even like slid it in to mock it up. In fact, I know I had. I know I slid the 289 C4 into the engine bay of this Rambler, and I was trying to mock up whether we could use headers or exhaust manifolds or whatnot. And the day before I was about to start cutting metal to fabricate engine brackets, Chris calls me up. He's like, "Oh man, my dream car! I found my dream car." I'm like, "Really? Do tell." It's like, man, I was looking around wherever, Facebook, Marketplace, Craigslist. A 1960 Falcon wagon. It's a roller, no engine, no transmission. Interior is mostly stripped out, but it's there. It's all there, and the guy only wants like $800 for it. And I'm like, holy crap, dude, that's your car. You should go get it. He's like, well, here's the problem, man. Because I know this thing is going to sell fast because these cars are so rare. There's some demand for them right now. He's like, there's no way I can come up with the money to buy this car and still have the money to pay you for what you've done on the Falcon already, and on the Rambler already. He's like, I'm gonna have to sell the Rambler in order to be able to buy this. And by the time I sell the Rambler, I'm not, the thing's gonna be gone. He's like, man, I'm really bummed about this. I wish I could figure something out. And I'm like, you need to get rid of that. You want to sell the Rambler? He's like, yeah, you interested? I'm like, actually, I think it's a really cool little car. I've kind of fallen in love with this thing. And, I've got an AMC drivetrain I could just jam into it. I could be good to go. He's like, you really be interested? And he's like, so I kind of, we did a little horse trading, and I'm like, tell you what, I've done a bunch of labor on this car already. I tore the old engine out, and I've done some prep in the engine bay, and I did the brakes on this and all this stuff. I'm like, tell you what, instead of you paying me for what I've got in this now, I told him the figure of the amount of labor that I had. I'm like, why don't you just give me the Rambler and we call it even, and I help you, the 289 that we got built for this thing, I help you jam the 289 and the C4 into the Falcon. So my labor for installing the motor and transmission in your Falcon, plus the labor that I've already done on the Rambler, we call it an even swap. He's like, you do that? He's like, heck yeah. He thought it was great because that way he didn't have to pay me for my labor. It was kind of like a flat rate type deal. And I was super happy because I got this Falcon for basically no money. It was just my labor, but everybody was happy. So I got this cool little Rambler. He got the work done on his Falcon for basically free, and it was a good deal. Everybody ended up happy. And Chris introduced me to Parker. Parker's the guy that hangs out with Chris on the regular, and then so there'd be the three of us in here in the garage turning wrenches, drinking some beverages, and shooting the bull while we're turning wrenches and having a good time. And then Parker's got a couple of his own projects. Parker right now, he's got an early 70s motorhome that he picked up for free, and he's a younger guy, so he's looking to fix this thing up and actually live out of it. So he didn't have a place for it. I'm like, hey man, acreage. So he's got that parked out behind my house. He comes over whenever he wants and just works on it out back there. I got solar panels out in the back, and there's actually a 110-volt plug out there. So he just comes out, plugs in, runs his grinder, does whatever he needs to do. Once in a while he calls me up, hey man, I'm having a hard spot, can you help me? Yeah, sure, no problem. I come on out and give him a hand, and it's all good. But those guys, they're really cool cats. They'd be entertaining to listen to for sure. But at any rate, kind of get off on a tangent there. I think I'm going to sign off, let you guys go. But when you're doing a car project, have a plan. Get that plan, write it down, so that way if life comes up and gets in the way of your car project, you could pick up where you left off, as opposed to having to spend a couple days or even weeks unnecessarily repeating stuff or unnecessarily reinventing the wheel, I would say, coming up with that game plan again, because trust me, you're going to go into ram dump after a couple of weeks. You're just going to forget. Organize your fasteners, organize your parts, have a list, keep a notebook, have a checklist. Those kind of things will help keep you from losing your place too badly. And lastly, when it does come time, commit to your project. Commit at least 5 minutes a day, or 5 minutes every other day, or 5 minutes every weekend. Because that 5 minutes the first 5 minutes is the hardest part. Getting back out to the garage. It's cold, it's hot, it's uncomfortable. I got to put on my nasty, greasy smelling shop clothes. Once you've gotten out there, you'll remember how much fun you're having in the garage, and it's going to be a lot easier. And just keep hot rodding. Just keep hot rodding. Get some tunes. Put some tunes on that you like to listen to. Bring a friend. Invite some friends over. Because a lot of times having friends, someone to keep you accountable to your project. Because man, it sucks being a car guy and someone asks you, hey, so how's that project coming? And then you get it's been 6 months and I haven't done a damn thing just because I've been having too much fun going inside playing Xbox. So instead of sounding like a punk, if you know you're going to get held accountable, it's a lot easier to keep that motivation going. But that's it for now, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you like what you've seen. Comment down below if you think you want to hear a little bit more of these just kind of chit-chat discussions, talk about car stuff. And let us know what type of content you want us to talk about. If you want us to expand beyond the car realm, or if you want to just keep it car related, let me know. We'll do what you guys want to do. But in the meantime, keep the rubber side down and get out to that garage, work on that project car. I'm going to check on you. Stay accountable. All right, guys, take it easy.